going to share my screen, share the PDF file, which you can all acquire on your own. But otherwise, we'll share for everybody. Share entire screen, share, good, okay. Let's go to PDF. Okay, let's start. We'll read the introduction. And just articulating the words is helpful, even if you're not fully in comprehension of what we're saying here. Okay. Tziyon bemishpoat tipadeh v'sheva Yitzch'k. Tziyon will be redeemed through tzedakah judgment and are captives through tzedakah. Umevir admor bilkutei Torah dibor maskil zeh b'schilase. At the beginning of the Ma'amar in Likutei Torah, which we finished learning yesterday, actually, we have all three parts on this channel. It opens with the Rebbe does not immediately focus on the verse, but instead cites Mashikasuv Hayu Adri Ma'ila Asher Nuchim Tzavchayim. So he introduces the verse, but he doesn't really extrapolate on it at all. He just kind of proceeds to another verse. What's that verse? A verse from Shema, which we just read in Mariv, and we should read before we go to sleep. And these words that I command you today, right? The words are V'hayu Adri Ma'ila Asher Anochim Tzavchayim. Okay, so that's going to be the focus of this at least the first parts of this mimer. Shizet Kai Al Kol Yom, which is an ongoing command referring to every day. So that's the Indian of the Alter Rebbe. That how do we understand the words Anochim Mitzavcha Hayom, that it refers to every single day.
I don't have it.
Okay. Ki v'chol yom yu v'necha kachadashim. For as our sages teach, and this is brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, right, chapter 61, Seif Beis. Every day you should regard the words of the Torah as new. And the Alter Rebbe explains in the Ma'amar in the Likutei Torah the way to attain this outlook. To regard the words of the Torah as new every day. Through contemplating the inner meaning of the words of this very phrase. And these words that I command you today shall be. One must realize that all the worlds, the entire spiritual, as well as our material world, are brought into being by God's attribute of Malchus, which is merely a ray. And if anybody has a comment, this is a question I've been asking. What's the difference? What's the practical difference between the words Ziv and He'ora? Okay? You're going to say one's a ray, one's a ray. So why do we need two words that mean the exact same thing in Hebrew? If Hebrew is such a precise and perfect language. Anyways, that's just a side thing. You don't have to focus on that. For now, we'll focus on the fact that everything... What are we supposed to realize when we contemplate the words when we recite the Kriya Shema? That all the worlds are only from the level of God's attribute of Malchus, and Malchus is not the highest. It's actually, in fact, the lowest. Because it's pluralized, right? If God is one, then the lowest level is going to be the level that's pluralized because it implies a duality, which is kind of a concealment, a covering over of his true essence, which is oneness. And that's merely a ray, right? Merely a covering, merely a fractioned portion, not the actual thing. Malchus is described as a ray because it is of a different nature than the other spheros. The term ray refers to the light that radiates outward and not to the actual substance of the luminary. Okay. All the other spheros represent divine. All the other spheros represent divine, intellectual, and emotive attributes and are thus considered entities of substance. Malchus, on the other hand, communicates those attributes to the lower realms. Nevertheless, all that it can communicate to them is a mere ray. So it's like saying there's the original copy of something, of let's say like a document, like the Declaration of Independence, and then there's a photocopy or a picture of it that I'm communicating via a file on the internet. Right? A file on the internet, yes, it contains the document. The document's there, but it's not. If you point to, you say, yes, this is the Declaration of Independence, but you can't in any way compare the two. The original versus a photocopy or a picture, etc., let alone a picture that's been compressed and digitized and able to be sent over the internet, etc. To explain by an analogy to our mortal powers, a person's intellect and emotions tell us something about the person, who the person is. It's like the difference between a memory of an individual and the individual themselves being present in front of you in flesh and blood as you live and breathe, right? They're both the same person, but they're two very different levels of the person. Hence, these qualities analogous to those of the other spheres are described as being of substance. On the other hand, a person's speech, which is malchus, the lowest level of a person, relatively speaking, right, from God's perspective, or the lowest level of the spheros is malchus, which is analogous with speech. Okay? Because again, speech it starts a part of you, it starts concealed within you, but ultimately ends up external to you and also revealed. And anything that's revealed, we know is limited. On the other hand, a person's speech analogous to malchus tells us nothing about the person himself, right? People speak all day and they don't in no way reveal themselves at all. They actually conceal themselves. They hide themselves behind their speech, right? That's called lying, or that's called talking, really. A person can speak words of wisdom or love without possessing these qualities. Even when his words do reflect this inner qualities, they are merely a reflection of them. They do not convey the actual substance of the person's thoughts or feelings. Similarly, in the analog, malchus is a mere ray, an external dimension of God's light, okay? So what do we know about malchus so far? We know that malchus is only a ray, a glimmer, a fractioned portion, and in no way represents the essence of the thing. Or you could say it represents, but it in no way is comparable to the essence of the thing. But through fulfilling the mitzvahs in this world, God's essence, which transcends all spheros, is drawn down into this world. This is the implication of the phrase that I command you today. Anoichi, Misha Anoichi. Right? The mitzvahs are associated with the level of Hashem that's referred to as Anochi. What's Anochi? Anochi is God's essence, the only entity that can truly be called I. Okay. And this is a level of godliness that cannot be contained by a name, nor even alluded to by a letter or a point of a letter. Okay, so this is in opposition to the level of Malchus, right, which is the source of all the worlds that we just said is only a glimmer array. Anochi, which is associated with the mitzvahs, is a level that's so great, so beyond that we can't even allude to it with a name. We have to refer to it as just a prepositional phrase. But therefore, sages teach that 1 hour of teshuva and good deeds in this world is superior to these are left for the world to come. And I always remember this. This is Pirkei Avos chapter 4, halacha 17, because the 417 is the bus that takes you from Ramat Beit Shemesh to Yerushalayim, right? And I don't know, maybe you could say 1 year in Israel is greater than your entire life outside of Israel. I don't know if that's true, but maybe that's just my own opinion at the moment. For in the world to come, the souls derive pleasure from the radiance of the divine presence. Okay, now we're back to the idea of a ziv, of a ray. Ziv bilvad, the source of their pleasures, however, merely a ray of godliness. In contrast to performing shuva and good deeds in this world, God's essence is drawn down. This inference can be derived from the phrase that I command you today. Asher anochi mitzavcha hayom. Hayom davka. The emphasis is on the word today, which our sages interpret as referring to the world as they state. I'm saying referring to this world. Here, today, right now, when you can do them. Hayom lasoisam l'machar lekabel scharam. Today is to perform the mitzvahs. Tomorrow, i.e., what's tomorrow? The world to come. And we're going to see later that the world to come here, sometimes it refers to Gan Eden. Sometimes it refers to Yemos Mashiach, specifically Tchias HaMesim. Here we're going to say it refers to both, right? And that's very important that we know that it refers to both. But usually when we say where to come, it's in contrast to Yemos Mashiach, so it's going to refer to Gan Eden. But here it's actually referring to both Gan Eden and Yemos Mashiach to receive the reward for them. The reward to be received in the world to come tomorrow for having fulfilled the mitzvahs in this world is merely a ray. Since, as mentioned above, the soul derived pleasure from the radiance of the divine presence, whereas through the observance of the mitzvahs in this world today, to perform them, God's essence is drawn down. Okay, that should be enough for us. That should get us excited about doing things godly, right? So, what are we saying here? We're saying the reward for the mitzvah is seemingly less than the experience of actually doing them in this world. That should make you pretty excited. You could be dancing as a result of understanding this fully. In the Maimer and Likkutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe then proceeds to explain that through contemplating the implication of the phrase that I command you today. Okay, this is all just coming from contemplating this one verse. We haven't even started to understand in detail the verse from the Haftorah that this Maimer is named after. Tziyon bemishpoat, tipadeh. That I command you today, that through fulfilling the mitzvahs today in this world, the God's essence is drawn down. Okay, that's what we just said. That's a big deal. I'd say, frankly, that's the biggest deal, right? if Trump understood this, he would say, frankly, it's the biggest deal, right? He knows. A person will then continuously approach the mitzvahs with fresh vitality and energy, seeing them as having been given today. Meaning, what are we all running to? We're all running to our source of vitality and our source of newness and freshness. So when we understand that the mitzvahs are the source of all newness and really the only essence, the only true newness in the world, then that should make us excited, and we should be running and gaining vitality through doing those. Indeed, every day that will be as new in his eyes. Tabar Sage's words, he will not regard them as an old edict, right? Or the phrase old hat, right? Something that's so yesterday, that's so stale. But as new and fresh, again, like the news, like how people regard the news. How do people regard the news? They're constantly checking, they're constantly refreshing their news feed. Okay, but the Torah is your true news feed. Torah and mitzvahs are your true news feed. But as a new, fresh and means via to bond with God, one that was given only to him only today, right? And this is like the idea of the mun, right? The mun was supposed to be just for today. You couldn't try and store more for tomorrow, right? And whatever you had for that day was exactly the right amount, exactly what you needed. So that's Torah mitzvahs. In the Maimer and the Torah, the Alter Rebbe proceeds to explain that all the above, such an approach of freshness and vitality to fulfill mitzvahs is the way that it should be. However, unfortunately, but when this is not so, instead one's bitterness and joy stems from matters of this world. Then the spark of God within him, the divine soul, is in exile, as it were, within his animal soul. Okay, so we're saying there's an inversion. So if you're not deriving your excitement and vitality from the fact that when you do Torah mitzvahs in this world, you're drawing down God's essence, the source of newness, then inevitably your soul's in exile, meaning that you're going to derive energy and vitality from matters of this world, from superficial matters, not God's essence. When a person is in exile, he retains all his individual potentials. He simply does not possess the means by which to express them, right? It's like you want to scream out, but you can't. That's what we're saying here. The godly soul wants to express itself, but it can't. That's a state of spiritual exile. Similarly, when a person's godly soul is in exile within his animal soul, its godly potential remains intact. Unfortunately, however, his preoccupation with his material needs and desires prevents that godly potential from expressing itself. His godly soul is kiracha lifnei goizeha ne'elama, like a sheep that stands mutely before its shearers. Okay, it's like frozen. It can't act. It's like the fight, flight, or freeze, right? The freeze aspect. That's like being avoidant, having an avoidant personality. That's what we're saying here. To the extreme, you're frozen. You can't scream. You want to scream, but you can't. But Tziyon bemishpoat tipadeh concerning such a situation, the verse inside it says, right? This is from our Haftorah from this coming week's parsha, Shabbos Chazon, Parshas Devarim. Concerning such a situation, the verse says, Tziyon, the godly soul, will be redeemed through judgment, can be applied. Through the means described below in section 9, the soul can be redeemed from the state of exile. Okay, how do we do this? Explanation, however, is necessary, seemingly even when a person sees the mitzvahs merely as an old edict. Okay, so now we explained everything, how we have to view Torah mitzvahs. Now we're going to challenge that. We're going to say, yeah, but I know people, and I've experienced myself, times when I've done Torah mitzvahs with excitement and alacrity, and I wasn't thinking about the fact that I'm drawing down God's essence. It nevertheless remains possible for him to observe them with energy and vitality. In his Shulchan Aruch, who's him, the Alter Rebbe, writes that when a person has heard something many times before, he will not cherish it like he did when he heard it for the first time, right? It feels like the very first time. Right? There's nothing like the first time, though we're saying that's the way we have to approach Torah mitzvahs. But that's because we require a certain understanding in order to acquire that. We require in order to acquire a certain vitality when we do mitzvahs. What do we require? We require the understanding that this is actually atzmos. This is actually Hashem's essence. Everything else is from the level of malchus, which is something of a ray, something of a contracted, fractioned portion of Hashem. Whereas when we do Torah mitzvahs, we're literally grabbing onto Hashem himself. And that's greater than the experience we have when we receive the reward for the mitzvahs in the next world. Okay? But seemingly, I've had excitement. You can argue, I've had excitement. I've had energy when I did Torah mitzvahs without understanding all this, without thinking about this at all. Implied is that he may indeed cherish it, but not to the same degree as he did originally. Similarly, a person who does not regard the Torah mitzvahs as new every day may not fulfill them with the same energy and vitality as one who does regard them as a novel and fresh. Literally new. This is part of mindfulness. Part of the idea of mindfulness is appreciating that every moment is created anew. Right? And especially if you're doing Torah mitzvahs, then you're being hooked up to the source of all newness. He may, however, be inspired to observe them with energy vitality. Okay, but nonetheless, we could still observe mitzvahs, Torah mitzvahs with energy vitality, despite the fact that we don't have this perspective necessarily. That's his argument. To the extent that his fulfillment of the Torah mitzvahs becomes the primary element of his life, meaning this is what a person does. This is what the focus of his life is. So he has energy vitality because this is what he lives for. He doesn't realize that this is the source of his life, but this is what he lives for, perhaps. Nevertheless, the Alter Rebbe says, based on his mimer, but when this is not so, meaning what? Seemingly implies that when one does not seemingly regard the Torah mitzvahs as new, it is certain, okay, by default, his bitterness and joy stems from the world matters of the world. Hashem, the Alter Rebbe is very, sometimes people will tell you in modern psychology that you have to be dialectic. You have to be able to hold two things at the same time. And that's true here. But here the Alter Rebbe is saying that you cannot appreciate the Torah mitzvahs as brand new if you're getting excitement from the world and vice versa. If you're not appreciating the Torah mitzvahs as the source of newness, then inevitably you're going to be getting your vitality from the world. So he's saying, no cigar. Inevitably, if this is not your viewpoint, then there's no middle ground. There's only this or nothing. On the surface, this is not the case. A person who may necessarily view the Torah mitzvahs as entirely new can nevertheless fulfill them with energy and vitality to the point that his entire life revolves around them. As such, why does Likkutei Torah make such an absolute statement? Right? Why is he so extreme with this? Can we work there little by little? By the way, that's not the case. Every time you decide to do something, you're doing it in the flash of a blink of an eye. You decide, I'm going to start doing this, even if it takes you months and months and months to adopt that, whatever it is, the personality change or the change in routine that you want to adopt. You made the decision in a second, right? That's what Tony Robbins says in his book, Awaken the Giant Within. He says, the whole chapter says change happens in an instant. That's what Alter Rebbe is saying here. He's saying, no, this is not something that you go back and forth on. This is something that you turn on like a switch. And if it's not on, then it's inevitably off. Another statement of the Maimer also. Okay, so the first thing the Rebbe challenged of the Alter Rebbe. By the way, when he challenges, he's really making the Alter Rebbe's statement stronger. He's really helping us understand by challenging these statements. Another statement of the Maimer also requires explanation. The new outlook that the Torah mitzvahs be new every day. Who all your days is accomplished via contemplating the concept alluded to by the phrase, I command you today. What's today? That through from the mitzvahs in this world today. God's essence. What's the essence? God's inner vitality is drawn down. This accomplishment is far superior to the reward to be received in the world to come for having fulfilled the mitzvos. As we said, the reward for the mitzvahs in the next world is only a glimmer. It's only a fraction portion of God, not his essence. His essence is his essence. What can we say about his essence? And that's alluded to by the I want to call it a name, but that's alluded to by the Hebrew word anochi. I. That's all you can say about it. Use a prepositional phrase. You can't even use a name because it's so internal. It's so elusive to a finite being such as ourselves. It would seem that since the satisfaction and pleasure derived from the radiance of the divine presence of the world to come constitutes overwhelmingly great pleasure, right? This is true in particular in the present text. The term of the world to come refers. And this is true even, remember we said that Olam Haba, the world to come, usually refers to, if there's no explanation around it, usually refers to Gan Eden. But here we're saying this is true even if you're going to use it to as as a name to allude to the last part of the redemption, the final redemption, which is Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, which is going to be even greater revelation than they experience in the higher worlds. Right? That's the catch-22 of this lowest world, is that ultimately this is going to be the source of the greatest revelation, because the greatest light is that which comes out of the greatest darkness, right? Okay, this is true in particular since in present context, the world to come refers not only to Gan Eden, the non-corporeal world of the souls, but also to the era of the resurrection. And the revelation that will be characterized in the era of the resurrection. Right? Again, the three steps in the final redemption, final what we call Mashiach, Messianic era. It's going to be first the building of the base of Mikdash, then the gathering of the exiles, and then finally the resurrection of the dead. So we're saying when we refer to the experience of the next world, it's going to surpass the level that's elicited by us doing mitzvahs here right now today. Hayom, in this world, physical world, is going to surpass even the experience of the revelation that's going to be experienced during the time of the resurrection of the dead, which is the crescendo of the final redemption. Okay. Hare gamal yidei hisponinus ba'ilui. Dischara mitzvah boilam habo. Thus, seemingly, even merely contemplating the superior nature of the reward to be granted in the world to come from the mitzvahs, will inspire a person for the mitzvahs with energy and vitality. Okay, so another challenge. Seemingly, can't you just think about the reward that's going to be experienced for the mitzvahs, and that's going to give you your energy and vitality? Why do you have to think about the fact that the mitzvahs themselves are God's essence? Can't the reward for the mitzvahs be enough for somebody to have energy and vitality when doing the mitzvahs here, now, in this world? No, the Alter Rebbe is going to say no. It's such a strange word. Oh, it's a strange thing. However, in the Maimon, the Alter Rebbe states that in order that one view the mitzvahs as new and not as an old edict, it's necessary that he contemplate the concept implied by the phrase that I command you today. That he develop an appreciation of the virtue of the connection with God's essence established through fulfilling the mitzvahs in this world, here, today, right now, not in the next world of Gan Eden, not in the next world of Mashiach, not even in the next world of the Mashiach and the Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead. The Mashiach of the Mashiach, you might say. And that's what's implied by the word hayom, to observe them, which surpasses receiving the reward for their fulfillment that will occur tomorrow, i.e. in the world to come. Again, whether that means to you Gan Eden or even greater, Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead, in the final culmination of the redemption, the final redemption Mashiach. Okay, let's do the summary and then we'll stop for today. Okay, here we go. Beginning of the Maimon L'Kutei Torah, right? That's the compendium of Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi, that was ultimately compiled by his grandson, the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Rebbe Chabad, that the Rebbe is commenting on in this Maimer, who's the seventh Rebbe Chabad, right? So we have almost three distinct generations that are included in this one Maimer, just right off the bat. In the beginning of the Maimon L'Kutei Torah, that opens with the verse, Tziyon bemishpoat tipadeh. Tziyon will be redeemed through judgment, or captives through tzedakah. These are the words of the Haftorah for this coming Shabbos' Torah reading, right? This is called Shabbos Chazon, Shabbos of Vision, the Shabbos preceding Tisha B'Av. The Alter Rebbe cites the phrase, and these words that I command you today. Okay, so right off the bat, he quotes something else. He quotes a pasuk from Shema. Asher Anochi Mitzavcha Hayom. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher Anochi Mitzavcha Hayom, right? Which everybody should read at least twice a day. And then refers to the interpretation of that. The phrase serves as an ongoing command that, right, what do we need the word today for? Why can't I just say, I command you? Okay, that's good enough for me. Today. Well, what's today? That's kind of awkward. No, it's coming to tell us, coming to hint to something. What's it hinting to? It's hinting to the fact that every day you should regard the Torah and the words of the Torah and the mitzvah says new, right? Like it's the first time every day. Hayom, meaning every day should be the first day, the first time you're experiencing it. The way to achieve this outlook is through contemplating the inner meaning of the words of the phrase, and these words that I command you today. that through fulfilling the mitzvahs in this world, God's essence is drawn down. Okay, that's a big deal. Okay, so Hayom tells us that no, it's specifically in this world today that we elicit the Anochi, the level of Hashem that's associated with the word Anochi, which is essence, total essence, beyond, 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 beyond. As opposed to, I might even say, any name of God. A name is already a lower level than Anochi. Anochi is just a preposition. It's just I don't know. In contrast, the existence of the world, the entire spiritual cosmos, as well as our material world, are associated with the lower dimension of godliness. What's that level? It's the level called Malchus. On this basis, we can understand our sage's teaching in Pirkei Avos, chapter 4, 17th Mishnah. 1 hour of Shuvah and good deeds in this world is superior to the entire life of the world to come. In the world to come, the souls derive pleasure from the radiance of the divine presence, a mere ray of godliness, a limited capacity, right? In contrast, through Teshuvah and good deeds in this world, God's essence is drawn down. And by the way, Teshuvah and good deeds. Teshuvah, because again, the lower you are, right? If someone's doing Teshuvah, everyone's doing Teshuvah, but ultimately, when you're doing Teshuvah, you're going from you're starting to turn around from the lower point, right? So because you're so low, you elicit a greater light. It requires a greater light, and you draw down a greater light. Okay, in the Maimer Likutei Torah, the Alter Rebbe there proceeds to explain that through contemplating the implications of the phrase that I command you today, through fulfilling the mitzvahs today in this world, God's essence is drawn down. A person will approach the mitzvahs with unique vitality and energy. He will see them as having been given today. Every day will be as new in his eyes. Every day will be like the very first time. The Alter Rebbe then proceeds to state that all the above is such an approach. Such an approach of freshness in the observance of mitzvahs is the way that it should be. However, but when this is not so, and bitterness and joy stem from the matters of this world, God forbid, then the godly spark within him is in exile, as it were, within his animal soul. Concerning such a situation, the verse states, Tziyon, i.e. the godly soul that's within every individual Jew's heart, will be redeemed through judgment. Through the means described further on in the Mimer, the soul can be redeemed from the state of exile. Explanation, however, is necessary. It would seem that when a person sees mitzvahs merely as an old edict, it is nevertheless possible that he will observe them with energy and vitality. But is that really the case? The Rebbe is going to challenge to make the Alter Rebbe's point even stronger and clearer and firmer in our hearts and minds. Is that really the case? Seemingly, nevertheless, the statement of the Maimer Likutei Torah says, but this is not so. Okay. It would seem that even when a person sees mitzvahs merely as an old edict, it is nevertheless possible that he will observe them with energy and vitality. Meaning, I know people that do mitzvahs with energy and vitality, even without understanding this fully or having this perspective, right? That the Torah, you're literally eliciting God's essence when you do Torah mitzvahs. Nevertheless, a statement in the Maimer Likutei Torah, but when this is not so, seems to imply that when one does not regard the Torah mitzvahs as new, his bitterness and joy both certainly stem from matters of this world. Meaning, if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not contemplating, eliciting God's essence, Anochi, when you do Torah mitzvahs, Hayom, here in this world, then inevitably, where are you getting your pleasure from? You're getting it from matters of this world. On the surface, this is not the case. A person who does not necessarily view the Torah mitzvahs in such a manner can nevertheless observe them with energy and vitality. As such, why does Likutei Torah make such an absolute statement? Okay. Meaning, why is he being so extreme? Explanation is, okay, so that's the first question, the first challenge to the Alter Rebbe's premise. And prescription. He's really giving us a prescription for perspective. Explanation is also required concerning another statement in the Mimer that attaining the outlook of the Torah mitzvahs is new every day is accomplished through contemplating the concept alluded to by the phrase I commanded today. That through the observance of mitzvahs in this world today, God's essence is drawn down on the surface, since the satisfaction and pleasure derived from the radiance of the divine presence in the world to come constitute overwhelmingly great pleasure, right? And the proof we have from the Likutei Torah is they bring the Rabbi Meir was so insistent that his former teacher, whose name was, he's referred to as Acher, but this Elisha ben Nevuya, was a sage who went off the derech and was on such a low level that he thought it wouldn't be worth it for him to go through purgatory in order to experience the next world. And Rabbi Meir ultimately determined with the sages that it would be worth it for him. So seemingly there's a great pleasure, overwhelming pleasure to experience in the next world. So why can't that be the source of my excitement and vitality when doing Torah mitzvahs? Right? So let's see here what he says here. On the surface, since the satisfaction and pleasure derived from the radiance of the divine presence in the world to come, whether that means Tchias HaMesim or whether that just means Gan Eden, constitute overwhelmingly great pleasure. It would appear that even contemplating the superior nature of the reward to be granted, right? If you think about a pleasure you're going to have in the future, you can do things right now that aren't so pleasurable, but with the anticipation of the future pleasure, that will give you energy and vitality to fuel your action now. So why can't that be good enough to do Torah mitzvahs? Why can't we just think about the reward to be out in the future? Okay. It would appear that even the contemplating the superior nature of the reward to be granted for fulfilling the mitzvahs will serve to inspire a person to observe the mitzvah energy and vitality. This being the case, why then does the mimer state, right? Which mimer? The mimer in Likutei Torah with the same name, state that such an approach can only be attained through an appreciation of the connection with God's essence established through fulfilling the mitzvahs in this world. Okay, so seemingly the Alter Rebbe there is also disagreeing and saying, no, it has to be, you have to have this perspective or not. Inevitably, you're going to be getting your pleasure from matters of this world. Either you're getting your pleasure directly from Hashem through Atzmus, through contemplating the words in Shema, that I'm going to listen in God's essence in this world when I'm doing Torah mitzvos, or inevitably I'm going to be sunk into the level of acquiring joy and depression from matters of this world. It's one or the other. You can't have both ways in this case. Okay, Yashar Koach, we'll stop here.